Good morning, students. Students, up till now we have discussed the chapter life processes till transportation in animals. So, our next topic is transportation in plants. We all know that plants they are different from animals, as in our previous topics we have already discussed that what are the differences between plants and animals. So let's take a recap of all those differences which we have earlier discussed. That first of all, the plants, if we compare them with the animals, they are stationary, they remain fixed at their position. They don't have to move from one place to another place in the search of food, shelter, or any other purpose. They just remain fixed at their position. Second thing, that in plants, if we see that in your class 9th you have studied about different kind of tissues that are present in the plant. So maximum part of the plant, it is made up of dead cells. Okay, and if the maximum part is made up of dead cells, so what will happen over there? There will be no metabolic activities that are taking place in these kind of cells. So in plants there is low energy requirement, as they don't have to move from one place to another place. Okay, so if there is low energy requirement, automatically we can relate this thing with the requirement of nutrients. So nutrient requirement is again very low, because there is no requirement of very much high amount of energy. So that's why the nutrients required, they are also very low. So all these points, they are focusing that plants, they need transportation, but the complexity of plant is not as much as compared to the animals. But plants, they also require the process of transportation. They are the living organisms, so we can say that they also require the transportation, but the process of transportation is not that much advanced, not that much organized as that was in animals. So let's discuss that what is the need for transport in the plants, that why the plants they require the method of transportation. Now we all know that the plants they follow the process of diffusion. I hope you all are familiar with diffusion. Diffusion is just the movement of molecules from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. Now what happens, the plants mainly they show the process of diffusion to perform various metabolic activities, but this diffusion, it cannot meet the requirement of the movement of material, as the rate of diffusion is slow. Okay, materials they flow via diffusion at very slow rate. Okay, so that is very slow process, so that's why it can't meet the need of the plants. Second, water and minerals, they have to be taken to the top of the plant, and they are absorbed by the roots. We all know that plants they have roots which absorb water and minerals from the soil, but that water and mineral is also required at the tip of the plant, at the tip of the shoot of the plant. So how come it is possible that the plant which is absorbing the water and mineral from the root, it can pass on that water and mineral to the tip? If you see around yourself, you see the eucalyptus trees, they are having so much height, near about 100 meters of height. So how it is possible that an eucalyptus plant, the soil which is containing water and mineral, that was absorbed by the root, and that root, it can supply the water to that much height? By diffusion it is not possible ever, because diffusion can always occur for the short length. Okay, it cannot take off the water and minerals to that much higher area. Okay, so food is manufactured in the leaves and then supplied to all parts. That is again requirement for the plants for transportation. As we know that kitchen of the plant, it is leaf. So leaf is preparing the food by photosynthesis. So that food, it has also to be transport from one part to another part. Now during the spring season, we all know that spring season में क्या होता है, new flowers they arises, fruits they arises. So at that time the stored food in the root and stem, it is mobilized, it start moving from that stored area to the newly formed area, because over there in the newly formed area over there, the amount of energy required is high. Okay, so that's why the continuous amount, to maintain the continuous amount of energy, the regular supply of nutrients is there. So for this flow also we require the transport in the plants. Okay, so in our lower classes, if you remember, we have studied about the different types of transport in the plants. For the transport in the plants, we have studied about the vascular tissue. We have studied about the vascular tissue or vascular bundle in class 9. So this vascular tissue, it is the complex tissue, आपने 9th में पढ़ा है, and it constitutes of two parts, that is xylem and phloem. Now if we talk about xylem, xylem is the main conducting unit of the plants which conduct water and mineral, or we can say which transport water and minerals from root to the different parts of the plant. Okay, so in class 9th you have studied that xylem, it is made up of 4 types of cells, that are xylem tracheids, xylem vessels, xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma. Okay, out of these 3 they are dead and 1 is living. Now if we talk about the phloem, phloem is again the kind of complex tissue, it is again the conducting unit, but this phloem, it is transporting the food from source to the sink. Source is where the food is being prepared, and sink is those areas where there is requirement of that food. So phloem cells, they are again made up of, phloem tissue, they are again made up of 4 kind of cells: sieve tube, companion cells, phloem fiber and phloem parenchyma. Out of these 3 are living and 1 is dead. Here 1 was living and 3 were dead. Clear? Now if we talk about the transport of water and minerals, so it is the main function of xylem. So water and minerals, we all know, they are absorbed by the roots from the soil. And xylem, out of these 4 types of xylem, 4 cells of xylem, main conducting unit of xylem is tracheids and vessels. They take water and mineral from the root and then supply them to the stems, leaves and all the growing parts. Okay, so this flow of xylem, it is always unidirectional flow, that will always take place from root to the upper part. Okay, so this flow is unidirectional flow. So xylem is only and only conducting the water and minerals, and the which part of xylem is conducting? Main conduction unit of the xylem is tracheids and vessels. Okay, now if we talk about the absorption of minerals, now the surface cells of the roots, like epiblema is the outermost membrane of the root, and the root hairs, epiblema has different modification which forms the root hairs. Suppose this is the root and this outer surface is epiblema, so epiblema get modified into the numerous number of root hairs. These root hairs, what they do, they absorb the water and minerals basically. Okay, as they are direct contact with the soil, so they actively absorb minerals, and then this kind of process by which they are absorbing the minerals, that is the active process which use the energy. Now if we talk about the absorption of water, minerals, it's done by the help of root hair, by the active transport. Active transport means that here the energy is being used. But if we talk about the absorption of water, so root hairs, they can also absorb water from the soil along with the minerals. As if we observe the structure of root hair, it is long, tubular and narrow in structure. So they penetrate into the soil interspaces and they form capillary properties, having the capillary properties of water. Capillary means it's quite narrow kind of tube. Have you seen the thermometer? The mercury, it rises in the capillary. Okay, so that much thin tube, that kind of capillary action is being observed when the root hairs, they are absorbing water from the soil interspaces. So those root hairs, they have high osmotic pressure than the soil water. So that's why the water enter into the root hairs through the process of osmosis. Osmosis is again a special kind of diffusion where instead of all molecules we will just focus on the water or any solvent. When water or any kind of solvent, it moves from higher concentration to lower concentration across the semi-permeable membrane, that process is called as osmosis. So here the root hair, the surface of root hair will act as semi-permeable membrane and water enters to the root. As there is high concentration of water in the soil, there is soil water, so from high to low concentration water will move. So water will move to the inner part of the root, and then from the interior of the root the water move to the xylem, because we know that xylem is that vessel, xylem is that tube which will transfer the water. Now it create a positive pressure in xylem channel. Now what happened, xylem के अंदर एक positive pressure create होगा because now it is having the water inside and that water comes from the root, and that's why that positive pressure that is present in the xylem channel, that is termed as root pressure. Now this root pressure, it can lift water to a certain limit of height. Okay, so it is helpful during the night time. Okay, so this kind of movement, it is helpful during the night in meeting the daytime deficit of water. Okay, दिन में जितना वाटर रिड्यूस हुआ है, जितना वाटर लॉस्ट हुआ है, उसको रिकवर करने के लिए रात में जो रिपेयरिंग होती है, जो रिकवरिंग होती है, दैट इज बाय द हेल्प ऑफ दिस osmosis. Now there is one another phenomena which is termed as ascent of sap. So before starting the topic, we should know that what is the meaning of ascent. Ascent means the upward movement. Sap means the minerals when they are dissolved form. Minerals when they are in dissolved form, they are called as sap. So as in this topic, we are getting now an idea that we will study that how that minerals, they are moving upward to the aerial parts. So ascent of sap, it is the phenomena which takes place in the aerial part, and this ascent of sap theory was given by Dixon and Joly. तो ये आपके competitive exams में question पूछा जाता है. Now what happened during the daytime, the extra water is lost by the process called as evaporation. Okay, so evaporation के through जो extra water है plants का, it gets removed, and that process of removal of extra water through the evaporation process is called as transpiration. Now as regularly transpiration, it takes place during the daytime, so it produces the negative pressure in the xylem. Like we can take the example of mesophyll cells of leaves and other young parts, they lost the water. As a result, what happened, now let's take the example, this leaf, as it lost the water, so the xylem tissue that is present nearby the leaf, here the pressure will create. यहाँ से सारा वाटर इवेपोरेट हो गया, तो यहाँ पर पानी की कमी हो गई, यहाँ पर पानी की कमी होगी, तो ये जाइलम के ऊपर सक्शन प्रेशर डालेगा. ओके, एज वी सक द cold drink through the straw, the same kind of suction pressure is induced on the xylem. The tension is created in the xylem. The negative pressure is created in the xylem. Okay, and this negative pressure, it pulls the water from below. Clear? Xylem is connected with the roots. So xylem will apply the pressure that was applied via the leaf. That xylem will apply that pressure from the roots to pull up the water upward now. Now, the water in this column is maintained throughout due to the two forces. The first one is force of cohesion. Co means same kind. So, when the force is maintained between the water molecules, that force is called as cohesion force. Adhesion means to remain close to something. ओके किसी चीज़ के बिल्कुल नज़दीक रहना. adhere मतलब चिपक कर रहना. So force of adhesion is between water and the wall of xylem. So these two forces, they are responsible for continuous supply of water throughout the xylem column. Okay, so by this we can see that how the roots, the pressure is created on the roots, and then the water and minerals, it is transported upward. That is called as ascent of sap. Now there is one more mechanism for the transportation in the plants, that is transpiration pull. It is just related to the above topic only. That negative pressure that pulls the water up as we suck the cold drink, I have already discussed with you. So the negative pressure passing into the roots also create a force of pull for absorption of water. So actually what is happening, there is the pressure that is exerted on the root so that it can maximally absorb the water from the soil. So if we see this diagram, it is depicting that how the water is absorbed by the roots from the soil. Then that water via the xylem, it moves upward and then it reaches to the leaves and other young parts. Okay, now during the daytime what happened, the water vapors, they are formed and extra water is lost by the help of transpiration. Now the next diagram, this diagram is depicting that how the pressure is exerted and how the ascent of sap, it takes place. Now this is the soil water. Soil water is absorbed by the root hair, and then root hair passes it to the xylem channel, and from xylem there comes the ascent of sap. I have already discussed with you. So that ascent of sap is responsible for providing the water to the different parts. Okay, like to the lenticels bark region. So यहाँ से भी transpiration होगी. Then the water column is maintained to the leaves where the stomatal transpiration takes place or cuticular transpiration takes place. Cuticle is the outermost covering of the leaf. Okay, thick waxy coating. Stomatas, you all are familiar with these stomatas. We have already discussed about these stomatas. They are having two functions. First one is exchange of gases and second one is transpiration. Okay, so this diagram, it is depicting the development of transpirational pull or negative pressure due to the transpiration. Clear? So these are the three important mechanism of the transport of water and mineral. The first one was via the osmosis. Second one was the root pressure. Okay, and third one was the transpiration pull, root pressure, ascent of sap, and transpiration pull theory. Clear? Now we come to the demonstration of transpiration, that how can we demonstrate that transpiration takes place in the plants. So for this you have to perform an activity. You have to take two pots, okay, of same size, and you will take one plant planted in a pot, and in another plant in another pot you will just keep a stick instead of the plant. Okay, a piece of stick, and now you will cover both of them with the help of polythene and stuck that polythene into the lower base of the stem. When we keep these two ports in the bright sunlight, what will happen? The transpiration takes place in the plants. Okay, so first, that is really a plant, the leaves, they will lose down the extra amount of water through the stomata, and you will observe that in plant A there are water droplets in the polythenes. Water droplets, they get accumulated in the polythene. But in the second pot where you have kept the stick instead of the plant, there is no transpiration that will take place. And if you observe the polythene of that pot B, you will see no water droplets, they are present in the polythene. So this tells us, this activity demonstrate that whenever we keep the plants in the bright sunlight, what happen? The plants start losing its extra water via the evaporation through the stomata. Now, what is the importance of transpiration for plants then? So only due to the transpiration pull, ascent of sap can take place. If there will be no transpiration, what will happen? No pressure will be created in the xylem so that it can conduct water and mineral upward. So transpiration is very important. It helps in concentration of minerals. Now, as a result of transpiration, water is evaporated. Extra water gets evaporated. So what is remained? Only the minerals, they have remained, only salts, they are remained. So they are in large amount now, because we know that what is the concentrated solution? When water is removed, this amount of salt becomes concentrated. In the same way, the minerals, they get concentrated during the transpiration. Now, transpiration, as it is the phenomena of evaporation, in class 9th you have discussed that after the ending of evaporation, it produces the cooling effect. In the same way, transpiration, it is again the phenomena of evaporation. So it will it cause the cooling of the aerial parts. Okay, aerial part means which are above the ground, and which generally get heated due to the continuous exposure to the sun. Okay, as we know that light continuously fall on the aerial part of the tree, so that part of the tree, the aerial part of the tree, it loses its heat by the help of evaporation. It just become cool down. Okay, now transport of food, that was about the water and minerals, that was the function of xylem. Okay, so xylem is helping in conduction of water and minerals, and we have discussed various mechanism by which xylem is helping in conduction of water and minerals. Now the next is the conduction or transport of food and other substances. Now, along with food, what you can imagine that what are the different forms which can transfer? They are hormones or other kind of nutrients also, which have to move from one part to another part. So this movement, this method of conduction of food and other substances is called as translocation. Okay, so in translocation, what is the meaning of translocation? That something is prepared somewhere and then it is moved somewhere else. Translocation, transfer of location takes place. So there are two terms, source and sink. Source, if we in general terms understand the meaning of source, it is the area where the food is prepared, where the food is in maximum amount. So area providing the solute for translocation. ये वो एरिया है जहाँ से एक्चुअल में मटेरियल जाने वाला है ट्रांसलोकेशन के लिए. Okay, and another one is sink. Sink is the area which receive the solute after translocation. Sink is the deficit area. It is the area where there is requirement of the solute, requirement of the food. Okay, so translocation is always bidirectional. So how can you say that translocation is bidirectional? Leaf is preparing the food. Okay, so some part of the plant is beneath the leaf, some part is above the leaf. So leaf has to convey, it has to conduct the food in both the direction, upward as well as downward. So that's why the flow is bi-directional. Okay, and during the spring season, what happened? The storage region, the food, it moves from the storage region to the growing region because the energy demand of growing region is high at that time. Clear? So what is the mechanism, what is the underlying mechanism which helps in the transport of food? So what happened? Food is in the form of solute. So that solute, it enters to the companion cell which are present adjacent to the sieve tube, as we have already discussed that in our lower classes, that companion cell and sieve tube, they share their nucleus. So they are present adjacent to each other. So firstly solute will enter the companion cell, and then companion cell transfer that solute to the sieve tube. So this create the strong osmotic pressure in this osmotic pressure in the sieve tube, and as a result what happened, the water from the nearby xylem comes into the sieve tube. As the water flows inside the sieve tube, the entry of water causes the high turgor pressure. Okay, and as a result what happened, the sieve tube content, it starts moving in the lower turgor pressure areas, and this flow of the sieve tube content to the lower turgor pressure area is called as mass flow or the pressure flow. Okay, so in this topic we have studied that how water and minerals, they are transported via the xylem, what are the different mechanisms, and in second part we have discussed that how food is being transported by the help of phloem. Okay, what is the underlying mechanism for the translocation? So that was all about today's topic. Thank you. I hope you all have understood the topic. Now what you have to do, you have to read the same topic from your book. Thank you.